Hello, my name is Matthew Philbrick, host of The Real Game, a podcast by coaches for coaches. Welcome to this next episode of The Real Game. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is, I wouldn't say near and dear to all coaches, but it's something that we as coaches definitely are affected by year to year. And I'd say probably for myself, this year, this has affected me more than usual. And that is the topic of athletic injuries or athlete injuries. I will say in all my years of coaching, this year has been the worst for injuries than I have ever experienced. We have on our staff here a great licensed athletic trainer, and that is Mackenzie Pede, and she is on the show today. So welcome, Mackenzie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great. So
Good.
Mackenzie spends a lot of time here and has been very busy this year. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna back up to the beginning of basketball season, or even before that a little bit. We ended, and I know I've talked on the show a little bit about our success as a basketball team last year and how great that was, winning the championship and everything. And really, we were pretty unaffected by injuries last year. I had two guys out, I think, that I could remember for one game apiece, and that's because they were sick. They weren't injured
Wow.
at all. So I think they had the flu or something, and they each missed a game here and there, but it was nothing even like a sprained finger or anything that really affected anybody.
Way
So
different than this year.
yeah, exactly. Fast forward to this year, it's October, the end of October, early November, and I get a call one Saturday afternoon from a friend of mine, and we were talking about something completely unrelated, and then he goes, "Oh, by the way, sorry to hear about Britt." And I'm like, "What do you mean sorry to hear about Britt?" So Britt is my starting center on my basketball team. He's a great kid. He's about six
Mhm.
six. He's like the heart of the interior of our team. And he's like, "Oh, he broke his foot." I'm like, "What are you talking about? How did he?" And of course, he broke it in a pickup game, just messing around at the school. So that
Of
was the
course.
first thing. And then, so it took him, I don't remember, Mackenzie, like 6 weeks probably before he could do anything.
Yeah,
Um, and
I would
then,
say.
and then we were by the time he was able to even start jogging up and down the court, we were into our season. Um, and then, of course, he was, out of shape and had to get back into shape and all that. So it was really after Christmas, mid-January, before he started to hit his stride again. Of
Mhm.
course, that affected us. And then let's fast forward to alumni night, uh,
Oh no.
cursed alumni night. Um,
Yeah.
I sat in a meeting the night before the alumni game with a bunch of people from the school I work at, and I just said, for the record, and I believe it's word for word, I said, for the record, I hate alumni games because somebody's going to get hurt and it's going to end their season. So the next night we had our alumni game, and my starting point guard, and I'll just put this in context, he's a senior, he's averaging 20 points a game. He's
Mhm.
100 and some points from 1,000 points, goes down with a knee injury. All right, let's just leave it at that for now. He goes
Mhm.
down with a knee injury. You came out on the court and checked him out, took him back to the room, and I remember you
Mhm.
saying to me after he left, "I think it's his ACL." And
Yeah.
I'm to myself thinking, I'm just in denial at that point. Okay, thinking,
Mhm.
I really hope that's not it. I didn't want to think that that was it. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, when you hear ACL, that's a season-ending injury. Um, so, anyways, and it did end his season, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's impacted our team profoundly, and we've been able to see that as the season has progressed. Not that they haven't, we've adjusted and we've done well in spite of those injuries, but
Mhm.
injuries affect coaches every day, and it's not something you can plan for. It just
Yeah.
happens. it's out of the blue a lot of times, and it sneaks up on you, you know. So anyways, that's what I want to talk about today. So Mackenzie, tell us a little bit about how you became a trainer. Was it something you always wanted, maybe as a kid, or was there somebody influential in your life that kind of helped steer you in that direction?
Um, yeah, I mean, I wish it was that cool of a story, but it's like, I think I was intrigued by it first in high school, and I think this is how it usually goes for athletic trainers. My athletic trainer, when I played soccer, I swam, and I saw the athletic trainer at my high school for my injuries.
Right.
And I always asked him, Cap, he's so great. I
Hmm.
think he's still there. He's the only one.
Okay.
And he has so many athletes. So I was intrigued by the profession after talking to him. He told me more about what he does. And then fast forward, I just went to undergrad. I just did a general health studies degree. I just wanted to figure out what I wanted to do, but I always had an interest in, you know, a healthcare professional type role.
Yeah.
So but I was still trying to figure it out. I switched my major like twice. Like I wanted to do forensic psychology and then I looked
Okay.
up like YouTube videos and I'm like I don't want to do that. So, senior year I took an intro to athletic training course and I really loved it. It was
Hmm.
with like Division 1 like college athletes. So I was like
Okay.
an athletic training student, I guess. And from there, I just applied to grad school for athletic training specifically, and 2 weeks later started that, and then here I am.
Awesome. So
Yeah,
so really, you mentioned this guy Cap, right?
Cap.
If
Yeah,
if
David Cap.
if Cap had been a jerk, would you have pursued athletic training, or would you have been like, I don't know if this is something I really want to do, or
Probably not.
yeah.
I mean,
I mean, it
I
sounds like he was a great guy and a great trainer, and at least impacted your life enough that it made you consider that as a profession.
yeah, I mean, he was I think all athletic trainers like we have some type of distinct like personality in some
Sure.
way.
Yep.
To be honest, like you have I don't know, it's interesting, but he was very personable but also extremely smart. Like I saw he actually when I was doing my hours to get into grad school, I went back to the high school and I shadowed him. So it was like between I think it was the end of undergrad. I was just doing a couple hours there and going back
Okay.
to my high school. So he had a lot of other tools under his belt that I didn't know, you
Sure.
know?
Hmm.
So it was interesting to me to see that and to really dig deeper. So I think in high school, I just thought it was a very interesting profession. And then
Sure.
once I shadowed him, I saw like how much more he could do. And I talked to him all the time.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do because
Nice.
it's nice. Like you get to connect with a lot of people, but like a lot of the kids that need you, it's like their
Hmm.
parents are grateful for you. They're
Yeah.
grateful for you. It's just like a rewarding feeling. So even as
Right.
a student, so
Right. Right. So you've worked with a lot of coaches and athletic directors. I assume you're working with me now. Do you feel like coaches and ADs appreciate trainers in what they do, or do you feel like they're a little threatened by them? And let me explain what I mean threatened by them. You, as athletic trainer, have the ability or the power to pull a kid from a game if you feel like he shouldn't be in
Mhm,
there, she shouldn't be in there. That can change the outcome of a game potentially, and it can
mhm.
potentially make a coach upset at you. Like, why? You know?
Yeah.
Um, so, anyways, back to the question: do you feel like ADs and coaches appreciate what you do?
Um, like I have been very grateful, to be honest, when it comes to athletic directors.
Hmm.
I'm early on in my career. I've been licensed for what, like 3.5 years now. So when I worked at high schools before, I was always like assistant athletic trainer. So the head
Okay.
athletic trainer deals with that type of, you know,
Okay.
side of things. But I did see usually when it's um, an issue with if an athletic director has an issue, it's or vice versa, like head athletic trainer, it's usually because of budget.
Okay. Yeah.
like we don't have what is necessary to treat the athletes here. And it's usually like, it's a conversation that it just needs to be clear sometimes. I think that's usually where the conflict is. It's all around like budgeting.
Yeah.
Um, Coaches, which I know is, I know you wear two hats here,
Yeah, I was
but
going to say, I happen to be both. So
exactly.
choose your words wisely, Mackenzie.
I know, right? I've been lucky, as I said. Like I haven't had any. I've always had support from the AD.
Mhm.
Um, Coaches, like most of the time, I have had pretty good support from them, and they
Yeah.
trusted me. And I think that's just because I I educate. Like I want to sit down and talk to them and have them understand. I don't want to just like take an athlete out of the game
Right.
and not just say, I'm worried about this and then take them out because they're just going to be, you're in the heat of everything and
Yeah.
it is a struggle sometimes. So I'm glad you asked this because I know that I've had issues in the past. One specific one that I want to uh, talk about that I might have told you before, but it was football season, high school, varsity football,
Okay.
and an athlete got injured at a practice and then came in the following day to see me. I told him to come in earlier so I can assess him. Um, and he immediately started. I thought it was a shoulder issue that he had, and I was very concerned about it. But
Okay.
he tried to scoot by me and just go to practice,
Mhm.
and I was like, I do really want to take a look at this because you couldn't even lift your arm yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's like one of the main, he's a really great player and is a big part of their team too. So that's why I'm like that with all of the athletes, but
Mhm.
I just told him and I knew how he was
Yeah.
as an athlete and I knew he wouldn't come to me. So I was like, I'm gonna touch base with you tomorrow.
Right. Right.
Um, he ended up having um almost like shock like symptoms when he was
Okay.
doing his rehab
Wow.
for his shoulder. So
Yep.
I was very concerned. I brought him into a private area. I assessed his vitals,
Mhm.
which were consistent with shock. And then he became unconscious.
Oh, wow. That took a turn.
It was like, yes, it was very quick. And proper protocol. Like, of course, the head athletic trainer wasn't there that day. So I had
Yeah.
someone else with me. And this was probably year two or year and
Okay.
a half into my career. So I was assessing vitals over and over, trying to get him to come to. Um, when he did end up, you know, coming to, and he was able to communicate with me a
Mhm.
little bit. And his vitals were still off, but they were better. I had already called 911 and they were
Okay.
pretty much there at the
Yeah.
time. Like I did that like right away. I was taking vitals, but I had called 911. So
Wow.
when the EMT, like when they got there, I said to him, what, this was during COVID.
Okay.
They were doing online school and then they would still come to school for practice.
Okay.
The kids
Gotcha.
were
Yep.
home all day.
Mhm.
Um, so I said, hey, like, what'd you eat today? Once he could communicate with me, what'd you
Mhm.
eat today? Trying to, um, figure out why this was happening
Yeah. Right.
prior to the emergency crew coming in. And he uh, told me because I had good rapport with the kids, like, he had told me that he had taken an illegal substance.
Okay.
And I said, that's good to know
Yeah.
because they need to
Definitely.
treat you appropriately.
Mhm.
Thank you for telling me. And then he went to the ER, you know,
Okay.
and he ended up being fine. But aftermath of this, being a mandated reporter
Oof.
with these things, I personally sat with this for a solid, like, I don't know. I mean, day.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
talked to the head athletic trainer that wasn't there that day. I called her.
Okay.
Um, and then I was like, I know I need to tell, the
Yeah.
athletic director this is an issue because technically you're doing this during school hours.
Right.
Like, and you're coming to practice, so it's a
Yeah.
little
That's a problem.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
Needless to say, best like one of the best kids on the team, huge role in the this was such a hard, you know,
Hmm.
but I knew what I had. I told the athletic director, he was out for the whole rest of the season. So
Okay.
I took that, I I really had a good relationship with the coaches and the kids, but I felt like I got the cold shoulder for a little.
Okay. Yeah.
But this was a situation that, in the question that you asked, like it was validated after. Like
Sure. Yeah.
the coaches came to me like as soon as they could see me in person after, and they were thankful that I was there,
Right.
and
Right.
they were, they were like, "You did everything right," and he messed up. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good that you were there, and sometimes making the right decision is the hardest decision,
yeah,
and I'm sure you are faced with that a lot in your line of work.
yeah,
Not like you want to pull a kid out and
hmm
make that decision to pull him from a game or whatever. So that's a great example. It's a great story, and it actually ties in very good with my next question.
hmm
Have you ever had to make a decision during an actual game to
hmm
pull a kid from a game, maybe even against the coach's wishes, and were you validated later? So you kind of answered that with that
yeah,
story. That wasn't during a game; it was during
correct.
a practice. But
hmm
have you ever had to do that during an actual competition?
Yes, I have. And I think in the heat of the moment, uh, I just want to start with athletic trainers don't want to hold kids from playing.
Of
Like that's
course.
the
Yep.
last thing that we ever want to do.
Right.
So I get upset, and I know I just don't like when kids come and they're like, I didn't want to come to you,
Yeah.
and because I didn't want to not play,
Right.
So
Right.
I want to work with you so you can play. That's my goal. Like I don't want to keep athletes out ever.
Right.
Even with the, or the incident, the
Hmm.
second athlete that you mentioned, with the knee injury. I didn't want to tell you that. I just wanted to. I did the Lockman's test how many times, and then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't even want to say it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's hard for us. But yes, I definitely have multiple times. I've been lucky enough that they were um, they were okay with that.
Hmm.
At least to my face, I knew that they were like upset, but um, they never like put an athlete back in after I said not to,
Right.
because I've heard of that happening to some
Yeah.
of my like colleagues when I worked at my last job. So
Okay.
that's that's wrong.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Um,
I I'd like to tell you a story that maybe I've told you this. I'm not sure, but a couple of years ago we had a team playing here. I'm not sure if you were here then or not. It
mm,
might have been one of the other trainers, but we've only had a couple. So
yeah.
there was a basketball game going on, and and I know you've treated athletes from other teams as well. Like you'll
hmm
treat anybody that's here.
Yeah.
And one of the best player from the other team went down with an injury,
hmm
and whether it was you or the other trainer, whatever, went over and treated them, and I think in the end recommended to the coach that they not return to play. I almost
mm,
think it was a head injury, but I'm not positive.
probably.
So the game went on, and we ended up winning. We would have won anyways. It was a team that they just weren't that good. We were ahead by a lot of points. So the game went on, it ended, they went home. A couple days later, I get an email from their athletic director basically accusing me of using my trainer to take their best player out of the game so that we would win the
Wow.
game. So how absurd is that? Like
Very.
first of all, when and you can verify this, when you treat an athlete from the opposite team, I rarely ask questions about what's going on over there.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
yeah.
just I don't think it's my business. If you want to tell me or give me, because I'm the athletic director, a little bit of a, hey, this happened, I'm going to document this or whatever and communicate
Mhm.
with the other team and the other coaches. but I'm never looking for information or trying to
Yeah.
use that to give myself an advantage. But I just thought
Yeah.
that that was bizarre.
It is, and it's interesting you say that because, it's also, that's a private thing, like, that's
Sure.
HIPAA.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
if you were to ask me about it,
Yeah.
I technically like, I'm not supposed to talk about it really,
Right. I mean, the most
and
I would ever say to you probably is that kid okay? Like, is he
yeah, like,
okay?
is he
You
fine?
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally, and that's usually what it is, like, "Is he okay?" And I'll just say yes or no,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
don't really go into the whole thing, and it's funny you say this, and it might be too soon for this, but,
Oh boy.
um, the game yesterday.
Uh-oh.
Is it too soon?
No, no, go ahead.
Well, the, one of the opposing like, one of
Mhm.
the other, he was so good,
Yeah.
he was a great player,
Yep.
freshman. The freshman basketball player that is just, like, super good, plays the whole time.
Yeah. Yep.
He got injured, right?
Okay.
And I went over, honestly, it seemed like a significant thing.
Yeah.
I did a really good assessment, treated him like I would any other athlete, my team or not, and made the right judgment call, and he could go back in. But if he
Okay.
couldn't, I wouldn't have like, if he couldn't like, he could go back in, and I wouldn't hold and I don't wanna
Yeah.
say this because 'cause I'm sorry, but he definitely could,
Yeah.
and I don't even think like that,
Yeah.
and if that conversation were to happen with any other coach, I know it would not happen with you, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, like, if someone yeah, that's crazy that they did that, but it made me think of
It
that incident, to be honest, because I
yeah.
thought of it on the way home.
It is somewhat similar, and
It is.
it definitely caught me off guard. But so a couple of minutes ago, you alluded to the fact that your goal is to keep kids playing. Like it's never your goal to take kids out of competition and stuff. So talk to me about injury prevention for a second. What are some things coaches should be maybe incorporating into their practices to strengthen their athletes to help with prevention? No coach wants any of their athletes to go down. What are some
Mhm.
things that we should be doing routinely to prevent that from happening?
Um, so I'm pretty sure every school does like a summer conditioning thing or
Hmm.
conditioning prior to the season. I always think that's important, but um, I do think incorporating more dynamic stretching
Hmm.
prior. So by dynamic, static is when you put a leg out and you just hold for 60 seconds.
Right.
Dynamic is more like the like jogging down the court and jumping,
Yep.
doing like jumping jacks, dynamic warm
A lot more
ups.
movement. Yeah.
Yeah. And different planes of motion. So not just stagnant type of
Hmm.
warm ups. Also, I think it is catered to sports, but
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
but I think just having a little variety, like, football players that do ballet. Have you ever heard of that?
Hmm. I have. Yeah. Especially running
So,
backs. Yeah.
yeah, like things like that.
Yep.
Specialization is never good. So just having a variety of things, I
Okay.
think was important.
Yeah. I do feel like since you've been here, I have incorporated more of the dynamic stretches
Hmm.
into our practice plan every day.
Nice.
It's never something we used to do a lot of, and I think that that's helped.
Hmm.
There are definitely, things that coaches can do, a lot of things that we're not even aware of, where an athletic trainer, has that knowledge and the ability to say, hey, I see that you're doing this, but maybe you could add this or also do this or that. And
Hmm.
that's one way that you've helped us tremendously. So I appreciate that.
Hmm.
Um, once an athlete has an injury or has been injured, how can a coach and a trainer work together to get the athlete back into competition as safely but as quickly as possible? So
Hmm.
quick and safe aren't always the same. Like an
Yeah.
athlete coach, well, I want that kid back in action as quick as possible.
Hmm.
The trainer, obviously, the athletic trainer takes more of a realistic approach. Like we want this kid back in action, but he has to be ready. It has to be safe. How can we work together to do that?
Honestly, I think generally looking at this, I know it's injury specific, right? Like you're not gonna if you have an ACL, rupture,
Yeah.
for instance.
Mhm.
There are ways, but not ideal. So I would say communication's key. Like if if I am thinking and making up a plan for an athlete that has an ankle sprain,
Okay.
just communicating in general to you about what he or she should be doing during practice and
Mhm.
what the athlete's goals are too. Like we just need to communicate about what their symptoms are, what to really stay away from completely.
Mhm.
So if it's day 1 or 2 or 3 of the ankle sprain, you don't want sharp cutting movements and things like
Right.
that. So just but they can shoot, like they can stand and shoot and they can do, the dynamic stretching and they
Mhm.
can, just I think communicating gets a lot of issues out of the way
I
when it
agree.
comes to yeah. So and communicating with the physician even, like, I've
Mhm.
reached out to physicians, to get their thoughts and just having a team effort to it.
Mhm.
It's a difficult question because the injuries can vary so much, right? And
Of
sports, like,
course.
if you break your wrist, you could still play soccer, but you
Right.
can't really play, can you play football? You
Maybe in
but
certain
I
you
think you in certain
definitely can't play basketball, but you
you
might be
can't,
able to play
no.
football.
But that's what I mean, like,
Yeah.
we could pad that and they could
Yeah.
play soccer.
Right.
So it's very different, depending
Yeah.
on the injury. But in the, like, grand scheme of things, I feel like just communicating in general is gonna be the most effective way.
Yeah.
Everyone being on the same page and everyone understanding the extent of it day by day.
Mhm.
If there's a setback, if there's things like that, that's when things go south.
Yeah.
Where it's
Yeah.
like, I've came to you about like Britt, you said he was like,
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, he's a little like, he's still sore, like maybe like more breaks throughout practice or
Yeah.
something. Just
Yeah.
communicating with you in general, I think
Slow
is
things down a
helpful.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mhm.
I agree that I would say the number one thing is communication. Also, we as
Mhm.
coaches don't always know, the time frame for things or how things should look. But I definitely think you do a great job at communicating with the coaches, with the school nurse when it's appropriate
Mhm.
to do so, with parents and with athletes.
Mhm.
So those four groups of people, I would say you do a great job of communicating. And I think that as long as everybody's in the loop with
Yeah.
the athlete, how he feels, not just physically, but mentally.
Mhm.
And then the parents, kind of knowing what you're thinking and how they can help their kid. And then the
Mhm.
school nurse or the athletic director, all those people.
Mhm.
As long as everybody's on the same page, it makes things so much easier. So
Yeah. Smoother.
very, very good point. What
Mhm.
would you say? And we only have a couple minutes left here, so a couple more questions.
Okay.
What would you say to a coach who might say to you, or an athletic director, not that they ever would, but potentially, hey, I don't really see the need to have a trainer on staff.
Oh,
I'm
I would
sure you've
probably
never
laugh.
heard that.
I haven't actually heard that, but I've seen articles, I've seen some pretty upsetting things.
Right.
And I would say, "Why do you like, interesting. Tell me more." And
Yeah.
then I
Yeah.
would let them go. That's just me being me. And then I would say, "So, how do you treat this and that and this and that?" And I probably would educate them on everything an athletic trainer can do.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
prevent injuries from happening. We do emergency care. What are you going to do if an athlete has a seizure, goes into
Yeah.
cardiac arrest?
Yeah.
What's your plan? I would
Yeah.
probably just start drilling them with questions and ask, what are you going to do? And
Yeah.
then once they say, I don't know, um, or I would just call 911. And
Yeah.
then, from a time standpoint, it's critical
It is.
in certain situations. So,
Yeah.
um, that's just my personality. I would
That's a
just be
great
like,
that's a
yeah.
great point because before this year, and I've had things happen in other years, but before this year, I never would have said, "Oh, I know how to deal with a kid with a broken foot," or I would know how to deal with a kid that tore his ACL in a game, or a
Mhm.
kid that had a seizure during
Yeah.
practice, or any of those
Yep.
things. And hey, guess what? Those things have all happened to us this year. So,
Yeah.
and you've been around
Uh,
for a lot of that stuff. And
yeah.
I think that in our case, parents and athletes have seen the value of having an athletic trainer here,
Mhm.
especially during competition and even some practices. To They don't really think about it too much until it affects their kid directly. And then when it
Correct.
does
Yeah.
affect their kid directly, they see the value in somebody who cares for their kid, who invests some time into their kid to help get them back to where they want to be, and
Mhm.
sees that, hey, this athletic trainer has my kid's best interest in mind, and they want what's best for my kid, so I'm going to do what I can to keep them around.
Mhm.
um, that's, to me, that's the bottom line. Like,
Yeah.
if it's good for the kids and it helps the kids, and it helps the parents, then it's an A plus all the way.
Mhm. I
Okay, one last thing. This is just for
Yeah.
fun. Okay,
Okay.
I haven't seen a lot of like gross or gruesome injuries firsthand.
Okay.
Though I think the worst injury I can remember was watching the Joe Theismann break his leg in a football game. That was years and years ago. I saw that on
Uh,
TV. What's
yeah.
the weirdest or grossest injury that you've seen firsthand?
Well, I brainstormed weirdest, which this was actually a story,
Okay.
but I need to tell it because I thought it was. I know we don't have much time, but basically, it was a kid sustained a concussion, and then the only thing he could say was a curse word. Yeah, and that was
Okay.
from a very, like, it was my preceptor. I
Yeah.
was an athletic training student at the time,
Yeah.
and I wasn't there that day. And he told me about what happened, and he said the kid was so scared, but that's all he could say
Wow.
was a curse word.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And he was so upset.
And he just
Like
kept
he
saying
was
it over and over again.
yeah, like he was trying to say something, but that's all he could say. So
Yeah.
that was a little bizarre.
That is
Um
bizarre.
to hear. I didn't see it, but that was bizarre.
Yeah.
Um, Also, any dislocations are brutal.
Mhm.
Patellar dislocation I saw, and it looked a little. It was patellar dislocation, ended up being total knee dislocation as well. So this kid's knee just looked like it was
Or was
not.
it like was it sideways on his leg, or how does that look
Oh,
exactly?
honestly, it was as if picture someone laying on the ground with their face up,
Yep.
and then everything in line perfectly, and then the portion of his leg below the knee was just completely externally rotated, so just
Ugh.
out towards the side. Yeah, that was
So
brutal.
that sounds disgusting, actually. Do you ever go like on YouTube or anything and just watch injuries like for fun because that's what you do? Or
Yeah, I follow a lot of accounts on, like, social media just to see
right?
injuries, orthopedic injuries, gruesome injuries. I love the weightlifting ones where they are trying to, like, s actually, it's usually the, leg press.
Yep.
They lock out their knees
Oh
with a
my
bunch of
word.
weight, and then they just hyperextend, and it just yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
I do enjoy watching those, to be
Yeah.
honest.
That's I was gonna say that's weird, but if you're in that line of work, it's not weird. So
No,
I
it's
saw
interesting.
I saw for the first time, I don't know if you're familiar with this injury, but there's a guy in the NBA, his name's Gordon Hayward. A couple years ago, it's probably been like 4 years now. He went up for a dunk or something and landed weird, and his leg, from his knee down, just goes in the opposite direction. And
Yeah,
it was, maybe you know what I'm talking about, and you're familiar
yeah,
with
I
that
think
injury.
I
But
do.
I just saw that. Like, I don't go
Yep,
looking for that stuff because it kind of makes
it
me,
just pops up.
yeah. But but then once I saw it, I watched it like 3 or 4 times in a row. So
You're like, "Oh, yeah, no."
uh
I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah. But anyways, well,
Mhm.
listen, it's been great to have you on the show today. We appreciate what you do here for us, and we appreciate
Thank
what you
you.
do for our kids. And it's good to have you around, and keep up the good work. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Real Game. I want to leave you today with a quote by Joe Gibbs, who was the head coach for the Washington Redskins from 1981 to 1992, and again from 2004 to 2007. During his first stint with the Redskins, he led them to 8 playoff appearances, 4 NFC championship titles, and 3 Super Bowl titles over 12 seasons. Gibbs is the only head coach to have won Super Bowls with 3 different starting quarterbacks, and is widely regarded as one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. And the quote is this: failures are expected by winners, but are ignored by winners. So good luck, coaches, and coach on.